In 1991, the curator of the Quesnel District Museum in British Columbia, Canada, was at her desk when a porcelain doll was placed before her. It had just been donated by a woman who gave little information, only that the doll had become fragile over time, and she didn't want her 2-year-old daughter to damage it while playing. The doll, named Miranda, affectionately called Mandy, was an antique, crafted in the early 20th century, likely in Germany or England. It had once belonged to the donor's grandmother. Oddly, rather than showing sadness at parting with a family heirloom, the woman seemed almost eager to leave the doll behind at the museum. When the curator picked up the doll for inspection, she felt uneasy. Mandy's expression was disturbingly lifelike, unsettling for something meant to be a child's toy. Her clothing was faded and worn, her soft body torn in places with stuffing protruding. Most unnerving of all were the doll's eyes, so realistic they seemed to follow anyone nearby. A crack above the right eye pushed it slightly out of place, creating the chilling illusion that Mandy was watching her observers with intent. The doll was sent to the restoration workshop. Standard procedure required sealing it inside an airtight plastic bag to check for insects that often infest antiques. Any pests would crawl out in search of oxygen. Yet nothing emerged. Still, staff swore they heard faint movements inside the bag, as if the doll was shifting by itself. Though no one witnessed Mandy move, her position was often mysteriously different. When it came time to photograph her for museum records, the staff left Mandy on a desk overnight. By morning, the room was in chaos. Papers and objects had been flung across the floor, even heavy items shoved out of place. At first, the staff member kept silent, fearing disbelief, until the scene repeated itself several more times whenever Mandy was left alone overnight. The curator compared the destruction to the tantrum of a child locked in a room. Eventually, Mandy was placed on display near the museum entrance, among other dolls. She was the first object visitors saw upon arrival. Almost immediately, people began commenting that the doll made them feel strangely uncomfortable, even without knowing her story. Some tried photographing Mandy, but the pictures came out blurred, foggy, or marked with strange light distortions, oddly consistent failures, especially considering disposable cameras were common at the time. The disturbances grew so frequent that Mandy was removed from display. Years later, due to public demand, she returned, but this time placed in her own glass case at the back of the museum, where visitors could choose to avoid her. Intrigued, the staff persuaded the museum director to allow a psychic to examine Mandy. The psychic, a well-known figure in the region, agreed without charge. His reading suggested not that the doll itself had suffered, but that the spirit inhabiting her had endured terrible abuse. What followed was a tale that blurred the line between folklore and paranormal mystery. According to legend, a man walking home one night heard a child's cries coming from a long-abandoned house. Curious and alarmed, he entered, following the sobs down to the basement. Forcing open the cellar doors, he discovered, illuminated by moonlight, the lifeless body of a young girl, long dead, still clutching a doll in her arms. Townsfolk believed her spirit had bound itself to the toy. This story, though unverifiable, became deeply tied to Mandy after the museum's strange experiences. Seeking answers, the curator visited the original donor of the doll. Reluctantly, the woman confessed she hadn't given Mandy away because of fear her daughter might damage it. The truth was far more unsettling. Ever since the doll entered her home after her grandmother's death, she had begun hearing the sound of crying from the basement. The cries grew more frequent, often silenced the moment she went downstairs to investigate. One night, however, the sobs were followed by the sound of tiny footsteps in the hallway. Alarmed, the woman rushed to check on her daughter, fearing she had woken up. But the child was fast asleep in her bed. As she watched her daughter breathe peacefully, the footsteps returned, this time moving toward the basement. The very next morning, the doll was handed over to the museum. From that day on, the cries and footsteps never returned. For years, the museum kept Mandy's unsettling story unofficial, a whispered secret among staff and locals. But eventually, they acknowledged it, introducing her to the public as Mandy, the haunted doll. While hers may not be the scariest tale among the countless stories of haunted dolls around the world, Mandy stands out as one of the few cases supported, at least partially, by the recognition of a public institution.